Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. The silence of the Redwood forest was supposed to be a balm. Elias Thorne had sought it out, craving its ancient, indifferent hush after his wife, Sarah, had left him. Not for another man, but for something far more permanent, far colder, the earth beneath a polished headstone. He'd inherited this cabin from his reclusive grandfather, a place his family had always spoken of in hushed, almost reverent tones. Good for clearing the head, his aunt had said, though her eyes held a flicker of something Elias couldn't quite name. It had been good at first. The air, crisp with pine and damp earth, filled his lungs, scrubbing the city grime from his soul. The towering redwoods, ancient sentinels reaching for the sky, seemed to absorb his grief, leaving him hollowed out but strangely serene. He'd spent weeks chopping wood, repairing a leaky faucet, reading tattered books from his grandfather's dusty shelves. His phone barely had a signal, a blessing in disguise. He was off the grid, truly alone, until the lights began. It started subtly, a flicker in the corner of his eye like a distant camera flash, but no discernible source. He'd dismiss it as a trick of the light, sunlight catching a dewdrop just so. Then one evening, as he sat on the porch, nursing a lukewarm beer and watching the last slivers of sun bleed into the horizon, he saw it. A star, but wrong. Too big, too bright, not twinkling, but holding a steady, pulsing luminescence. It drifted slowly, deliberately, across the vast canvas of the night sky, making no sound. It wasn't a plane, no blinking navigation lights. It wasn't a satellite too low, too deliberate. It was just there, a silent, burning eye in the heavens. He watched it until his neck ached, until it shrank to a pinprick and vanished behind the farthest ridge. He told himself it was a drone, some experimental craft from a nearby military base. But the silence, the sheer impossible stillness of its movement, gnawed at him. He went inside, locking the heavy oak door with a click that echoed too loudly in the sudden quiet of the cabin. The next few days were uneventful, yet the memory of the light lingered, a cold spark in the back of his mind. He found himself scanning the sky each evening, a nervous habit forming. The forest felt different now. The rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, sounds that had once been comforting now seemed like whispers, hints of something unseen. The animals, once abundant, seemed to have vanished. He hadn't seen a deer or a squirrel in days. The birds, usually a cacophony at dawn, were silent. An unnerving, profound silence had settled over the trees. Then came the dreams. They weren't vivid or terrifying in the conventional sense. They were more like static, a buzzing in his mind, overlaid with impossible geometry. Shapes that didn't obey the rules of perspective, colors that shifted and pulsed with an inner light, sounds that were not sounds but vibrations felt deep in his bones. He'd wake with a gasp, heart hammering, but with no memory of a specific image or event, just a profound sense of disorientation and dread. The world felt wrong, his skin crawled. One morning he woke to a persistent, low hum. It vibrated through the floorboards, through the very air, a resonant frequency that seemed to bypass his ears and go straight to his skull. He walked around the cabin, trying to locate its source. The refrigerator, the old well pump, no. It was everywhere and nowhere. It felt like the forest itself was humming, a living, breathing machine. He pressed his palms to his ears, but the sound was internal, a pressure behind his eyes. He tried to ignore it, to immerse himself in tasks. He started scrubbing the old, grimy windows, but his hands trembled. He paused, staring out into the dense wall of trees. A shadow, just at the edge of his vision, a deeper darkness than the natural forest shade. It wasn't moving, but it wasn't still either. It was there, a presence. He blinked, and it was gone. Only the unwavering green of the redwoods remained. You're unraveling, Ilias, he thought, his own voice sounding distant, foreign. Grief does strange things to a man. Sarah, he tried calling his sister, no signal. He tried again, pacing the cabin, holding his phone up like a divining rod. Nothing. The digital display on his old alarm clock, usually a steady red, flickered erratically, sometimes displaying gibberish characters before snapping back to the correct time. The hum intensified. He decided to drive into town, an hour's journey down a winding gravel road. He needed human contact, a loud, bustling cafe, anything to break this suffocating isolation. But his old pickup truck, usually reliable, wouldn't start. The engine turned over, sputtered, then died with a weak groan. He tried again and again, but it was useless. The battery seemed fine, the fuel tank full. It was just dead. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of his grief. He wasn't just isolated, he was trapped. That night the humming was a constant companion, burrowing into his thoughts. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a profound sense of wrongness permeate the cabin. The temperature fluctuated wildly, pockets of unnatural cold shifting from one corner to another. The air felt heavy, metallic, like before a severe thunderstorm, but without the scent of rain. Then the whispers began, not actual voices, not at first, more like thoughts not his own, drifting into his mind. They were fleeting like trying to catch smoke, fragments of alien logic, incomprehensible sensations, a sense of vastness, of immense age, of cold, calculating intelligence. He'd sit up abruptly, convinced someone was in the room, but the cabin remained empty, save for the oppressive hum. He started talking to himself, a desperate attempt to ground himself in his own sanity. It's just the hum, it's an old house. The mind plays tricks when you're alone, but the words sounded hollow, unconvincing even to his own ears. He barricaded the doors and windows, not because he expected physical intruders, but because he needed the illusion of safety, the tactile reassurance of wood and metal against the encroaching dread. He moved the heavy armchair in front of the front door, piled his grandfather's old carpentry tools against the back. Futile, he knew, but he did it anyway. The following days bled into a terrifying monotony. Elias became a prisoner in his own home. He ate mechanically, his appetite gone, his body running on adrenaline and fear. He stopped sleeping entirely. Every flicker of light, every creak of the old house, every shift in the air sent jolts of terror through him. He began to see them, not clearly, not directly, always at the edge of his vision. Tall, thin figures, impossibly elongated, melting into the shadows of the redwoods. Their movements were too fluid, too fast, like oil on water. Sometimes he'd catch a glimpse of an eye, not a human eye, but something vast and obsidian, reflecting no light, only absorbing it. One evening, staring out the window, he saw a peculiar light in the forest. It wasn't the pulsing star. This light was closer, directly among the trees, a soft, ethereal glow like bioluminescence, but much larger. It pulsed rhythmically, a slow, hypnotic beat. As he watched, mesmerized and horrified, the trees nearest the light began to change. Their vibrant green needles darkened, shriveled, and within minutes, they stood as skeletal husks, dead and barren. The light pulsed again, and the ground around them seemed to crack, dry up, turn to dust. The forest was dying, corrupted by this unseen presence. He stumbled away from the window, gagging. The hum in his head escalated to a roar, accompanied by a piercing, high-pitched whine that seemed to shred his eardrums from the inside out. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head, screaming, though no sound escaped his raw throat. When the noise subsided, it left a terrible quiet, not the comforting silence of the forest, but a dead, echoing void, and in that void a thought, clear as a bell, rang in his mind: we are here. It wasn't a voice, but a direct intrusion, a concept implanted into his brain. It was cold, utterly devoid of emotion, yet carried an immense, overwhelming authority. He curled into a ball, shaking uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. This wasn't grief anymore. This was madness, or worse. He spent hours huddled in the corner of the living room, a shotgun clutched to his chest, its cold metal a small comfort against the chilling dread. The windows were black mirrors, reflecting only his terrified face and the flickering flame of a single candle. The power had gone out hours ago, the silence of the forest now augmented by the silence of dead electronics. He heard movement now, not outside but inside the cabin, faint scuttling sounds like dry leaves being dragged across the floor. He spun around, shotgun raised, but saw nothing. The sounds came from everywhere, tiny, elusive noises that teased his senses, always just out of sight, just out of reach. He saw the lines. They appeared first on the wall opposite him, faint, almost imperceptible. Thin, glowing filaments, like spiderwebs made of pure light, pulsing with the same rhythm as the light he'd seen in the forest. They spread slowly, geometrically, across the wooden walls, the ceiling, the floor. They formed patterns that were beautiful and terrifying, impossible to comprehend with human eyes. Non-Euclidean geometry, fractals that twisted inwards, revealing infinite layers of detail. The cabin was being mapped. Or perhaps being rewritten. His mind felt like it was expanding, stretching to encompass these impossible visions. He saw patterns in the air, felt the vibrations of the light lines resonate within his own bones. His reality was bending, distorting. "No," he whispered, his voice a hoarse croak, "go away." But they were already inside. The air grew heavy, thick with a scent he couldn't place, like ozone mixed with something rotting, yet also sterile and metallic. It filled his lungs, choking him. The temperature plummeted, a bone-aching cold that seeped into his marrow. Then they manifested, not as solid figures. They were more like ripples in reality, distortions in the air itself. Tall, gaunt forms shimmering like heat haze, their presence marked by the strange geometric lines that pulsed around them. He saw no discernible features, no faces, only immense, dark eyes that reflected the glowing patterns of the cabin walls. They moved without friction, without sound, drifting through solid objects as if the world was no more than a suggestion. One of them was directly in front of him, closer than any shadow. He felt its presence like a physical pressure on his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. The hum returned, a deafening roar that vibrated through his entire body. The whispers were no longer whispers, but a cacophony of alien thoughts, flooding his mind, a torrent of incomprehensible data. He tried to scream, no sound came. He tried to raise the shotgun, his arms were locked, paralyzed. He was a statue, frozen in terror, his mind a battleground for forces beyond his understanding. We have waited. The thought was in his mind, not spoken, but directly transmitted. You are suitable. Suitable for what? His terror spiked, cold and absolute. The figures drifted closer, their shimmering forms radiating that unearthly cold. He felt a touch, not physical, but a profound invasion. It was as if ice-cold tendrils of pure thought were probing his consciousness, dissecting his memories, his fears, his very identity. He saw Sarah, her face distorted, then her image shattered like glass. He saw his childhood home, then it dissolved into glowing geometric lines. They were stripping him bare, molecule by molecule, memory by memory. His body began to feel numb. He could see his hands, his legs, but they felt detached, distant. The light lines on the walls grew brighter, pulsed faster, creating a blinding strobe effect. The cabin itself groaned, the wood twisting and groaning as if under immense pressure. The floorboards buckled, the ceiling cracked not from decay, but from an impossible strain. He felt himself lift, not physically, not in the way one floats. It was as if the concept of down had simply ceased to exist. His perception inverted. He was no longer in the cabin, but the cabin was inside him, the forest inside that, the world inside that, an infinite regression of inverted reality. The hum was now the only sound, the only sensation, encompassing everything. He was immersed in it, part of it. The cold receded, replaced by a strange, numb warmth, then a feeling of utter dissolution. His thoughts fragmented, no longer coherent. He was no longer Elias. He was a collection of data, a set of experiences, a consciousness being reconfigured. He saw them finally. Not through his eyes, but through a new sense, a perception of multidimensional existence. They were not figures, not forms. They were consciousnesses, vast and ancient, perceiving reality in ways that would shatter a human mind. They were not benevolent nor malicious, they simply were, and he was a part of their vast, cold, logical universe now. A sample, a specimen, a new data point. The last thing Elias Thorne remembered of his own self was the overwhelming, silent scream of his mind as his identity unraveled. His memories of Sarah, of his life, his very name, were not erased, but integrated, subsumed, twisted into alien patterns. He was no longer the man who had sought solace in the Redwoods. He was merely raw information, raw potential. The cabin remained silent and still in the heart of the forest. The light lines faded, leaving no trace. The humming ceased. The air returned to its natural coolness. The only anomaly was the unnerving silence of the birds, the absence of any living creature. And the subtle yet distinct aroma that now permeated the wood and cloth of the cabin, a sterile metallic scent like dry ice and rusted blood. Elias was gone. His body still sat there, slumped in the armchair, the shotgun fallen from his lifeless fingers. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing, reflecting only the dark, silent wood of the ceiling. But the light within them, the flicker of human cognition, had been extinguished. His mind, once a tempest of grief and fear, was now a placid lake reflecting an alien sky. He was still there, but he was not. And somewhere deep within the ancient, silent redwoods, a new hum began to resonate, not quite audible to human ears, a song of vast, cold, cosmic indifference.